What a crazy year 2021 has been. And if you are wondering how the real estate market is going to be in 2022, well then, this video is for you. In this video, I'm going to do my best to share with you some of my predictions on how the real estate market might look here in the greater Philadelphia and Montgomery County area of Pennsylvania throughout 2022. But before we jump into any of that, a little bit of house cleaning. I'm Chris Nelson with Genstone Realty, team lead of the Nelson Home Group, and this channel is all about real estate advice, tips, and tech. So if any of that excites you, you are in the right place, but do me a favor, drop me a comment, hit that thumbs up, consider subscribing, and mash that bell so that you're notified of my future content. So as I said, 2021 was crazy. I think it goes without saying, if you were in the real estate market as a buyer or a seller, a very unique and trying market. Buyers probably lost their mind if their offers weren't accepted, and sellers walked away from the settlement table usually with a lot more money than they expected. But what does that mean for 2022? So now, as I mentioned in this video, I'm going to share with you some of my opinions or some suggestions. And again, don't beat me up too bad, because they're opinions and suggestions based on some market conditions or things that we can look at, some telltale signs, as one might say, to help us get an idea of what may happen next year. So let's start with the inventory. Now, when it comes to inventory, that's pretty much the biggest challenge when it comes to real estate. Throughout 2020 and 2021, it was very much a seller's market. And the reason for that was because of the lack of inventory. Right now, and over the last 6 to 9, maybe even 12 months, we've seen roughly 1 or 2 months of housing supply. Now, what that means is in a normal market, you'd expect to see somewhere between 4 and 5 months of housing, and in a buyer's market, the opposite, somewhere 5 months or more. So the greater the inventory, the better the advantage the buyer has. The less the inventory, the greater the advantage the seller has. So in this situation, it has been a seller's market, and I definitely think that we're going to see the same thing throughout 2022. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the inventory is so low. Not only are we slightly off when it comes to inventory, we are ridiculously low. In some pockets here in Montgomery County, we have less than 1 month of housing inventory. So as you can see, with all these buyers that have been on the sidelines, they're not gonna go away. So I do anticipate housing inventory next year to be a challenge, because, well, builders really are one of the only ways right now that we're going to see a significant influx when it comes to homes that are readily available. I don't think that we're going to see a bunch of sideline sellers or resellers entering the market in 2022, or no more than is expected. So inventory, in my opinion, will remain low throughout 2022. Now, I just mentioned new construction. Now, new construction is going to be unique, if you will, throughout 2022, as it has been throughout 2021. And a lot of that has to do with how the pandemic has actually impacted the market, and not the housing market, but the market in which we get a lot of our supplies from. You turn on the news and you see the stories about the ships can't dock, and that merchandise isn't making it to the shelves where these builders can buy things that we commonly need: stoves, refrigerators, wood, other supplies that, again, they need to finish homes. And we are also still seeing a disruption in the employment side of things. It doesn't really matter what type of work you're in. I think a majority of the industries have really taken a punch in the gut, and people really haven't come back to the workforce. And that does apply to the construction field as well. So when you factor all of those things in, I think that new construction throughout 2022, although we really need these builders to put these sticks up quickly, and I do think that it will help solve some of the inventory challenges that we just discussed, I think builders are going to have a hard time getting those sticks up quickly. And I do think that buyers are going to experience a lot of frustration, especially if this new variant that we're seeing in the news now does take off and does take even more people out of the workforce. But again, we'll see how new construction shapes up in 2022. And I do think that because of the limited supply chain issues, I do think that the builders are going to have to pay more. I don't know if they're going to pass that buck off to the consumer, but I do think builders are going to have to pay more for some of these supplies as well. Now, one thing that is going to be new or unique to 2022 when it comes to buyers, and I guess this applies to sellers as well, because the more buying power a buyer has, well, the more opportunity the seller has to make money. But where I'm going with that is FHA has recently raised their loan limits. The average home price has just skyrocketed over the years, so trying to write loans that conform with these properties has been a challenge. But there's several moving factors. Long story short, FHA has increased the loan amounts for FHA conforming loans. So I think you're going to see more FHA buyers in 2022, which is great. I know we saw a lot less in 2021 because we saw a lot of cash transactions. We saw a lot of buyers who would usually go FHA try to find ways to avoid going FHA, so that some might argue that their offer was more attractive to the seller. But ultimately, I do think that we'll see more FHA buyers come into the market in 2022. What about interest? Interest is probably one of the most important equations as well, aside from inventory. The interest has been significantly, historically low over the last few years. If you weren't refinancing or if you were on the sideline considering whether you should buy, if someone wasn't pinching you or kicking you, telling you that now is the time, because the ability to borrow at these rates, again, is historically unseen. But we are hearing conversations from some of the biggest players when it comes to the housing market that we are going to see interest increase. There's conversations that by the tail end of 2022, we could see interest rates in the 4s. If you have an interest rate in the 4, it's still a great rate overall, but it could have been better. And if you were thinking about buying today, it still is better than 4. To add some context, in January of 2021, the average rate around that time was 2.65%. Where just 4 months later in April, that needle moved to about 3.18. Now, those numbers sound confusing. What does that mean? If you're asking yourself, well, what exactly does that mean? If you were to buy a home here in North Wales, I ran this equation using a home at $375,000, and I believe the real estate taxes for the year were right around $5,100, $5,200 for the year. Well, in that scenario, that property, that $375,000 property at 2.65%, your payment came out to be about $2,178. 4 months later, at 3.18%, that payment was up $100 per month. Now it's $2,278. Now you may be saying, well, that's only $100 per month. That's $1,200 per year. That's $12,000 over the course of 10 years. So it's a significant difference. But now let's move that needle even further. Using that same house, now again, January 2021, that house would cost you roughly $2,178. But if that needle were to move to 4%, that payment then jumps to $2,440. So again, in that short period of a time, that payment went up roughly $370. That same house in just a year difference would cost you $370 a month more simply because of interest. So if that doesn't excite or motivate you to take action now, then I don't know what else will. But maybe adding another factor or yet another prediction when it comes to the housing market in 2022, and that's the appreciation of the home values. So as we discussed, the interest rates have gone up or are expected to continue to go up. The values of homes have gone up, and they have also gone up at historic levels. So if you are going to wait a year and those interest rates go to 4%, well, this $375,000 property, based on some of the appreciation values we've been seeing, or appreciation numbers we've seen is no longer going to be a $375,000 home. That property is no longer going to be a $375,000 home. If you look at different sources and you unpack the appreciation that we've seen over the last year, there's a bunch of different numbers, and there's national numbers, and I've seen numbers as high as 10 and 13% year over year appreciation. But right here in the Montgomery County area of Pennsylvania and the Philadelphia County area, we've seen about 5%, give or take, year over year when it comes to appreciation. So in this situation, this scenario, that $375,000 property may appreciate by roughly $20,000 between now and the course of next year. So if you are going to take action and make a move, not to create any urgency, but I think you can see the numbers, now is the time. 2022, well, the interest rates per all the signs that are there will go up, and the values of the homes will continue to go up. So depending on what side of the equation you're on or what side of the settlement table you're on, that could be a gift and a curse, or two curses, however you see it. A few other things that I think we'll see differently in 2022 is I think that the day, and I almost hope that the day of 20 plus offers is out of the equation, is no longer what we're dealing with, because dealing with 20 offers as a buyer is extremely frustrating, knowing that you are one of 20, and even on the sell side, trying to go through those offers and figure out which one really presents the best value for the seller is also quite a daunting task. But I think that buyers are now starting to realize that they were artificially inflating the market with all of these crazy offers, well over asking, with no appraisal, no home inspection. I think buyers are starting to come back to some sense of reality, at least over the last few months right here, again, in this market, Montgomery County and some of the surrounding counties such as Philadelphia. I still think we're seeing homes sell insanely fast, and I still think that sellers have the upper hand. So I want to be transparent in that it is still very much a seller's market, and my prediction throughout 2022 is that it still will be very much a seller's market. But where I'm trying to go with this is that I don't think sellers are going to have as many ridiculous offers to choose from. And that is somewhat of a major assumption, because it could change at any time. But right now, that's my gut. All right, folks, that's pretty much it. I know that there are other things to consider, and more than likely I will, as we get closer to 2022 or probably into the first quarter of 2022, I will revisit this video. Right now, with the Omicron variant just now making its way into the news lines, into the headlines, I'm not sure how much of an impact that's going to have on the real estate market. And again, now that we are going into the winter months when things just historically slow down, we are going into a season where people just are known to not feel well. I think that could put the brakes on a few things. I also think that the supply chain is also going to just create some turbulence, if you will, over the next 12 months. But ultimately, align yourself with someone who you think has your back, someone that, well, who am I kidding? With me, call me. With all that said, I appreciate you, my friends. Thank you for tuning in. Do me a favor, check in next week for the very next Just the Tip with Chris. Until then, take care.